My name is Alex. I'm 50 years old, and until 5 minutes ago, I was the Chief Financial Officer of Meridian Tech Solutions, a company I helped build from a two-person startup into a $50 million enterprise. 12 years of my life poured into spreadsheets, financial models, and late nights ensuring this place stayed profitable while everyone else got the credit. Marcus Chun, our CEO, wore that familiar smirk as he addressed the 9 board members seated around the glass conference table. The same expression he'd had when he took credit for my cost-cutting initiatives that saved the company $3 million last quarter. The same look when he announced the IPO plans without mentioning I'd structured the entire financial framework. As you can see, Marcus said, gesturing toward the door, we're streamlining operations for maximum efficiency. Alex's traditional approach to financial management is no longer aligned with our growth trajectory. Traditional approach. As if implementing proper audit controls and refusing to cook the books was somehow outdated. I stood slowly, placing my company credit card and access badge on the mahogany table. I suggest you check the quarterly tax filing status before the IRS deadline, I said calmly. Submission is required in exactly 18 minutes. The room went silent. Marcus's smirk wavered. What are you talking about? He asked, though his voice had lost its confident edge. I straightened my blazer. The automated quarterly filing system I implemented last year. Every 90 days, our tax submissions are processed through a secure portal that requires CFO authorization. Without that authorization, the filing fails, and we default into penalty status. Board member Jennifer Walsh shifted uncomfortably. What does that mean exactly? It means, I continued, checking my watch, that in approximately 17 minutes, our Q3 filing will be marked delinquent. The penalty starts at $25,000 per day, compounding. More importantly, the SEC will flag us for non-compliance, which will trigger an automatic review of all our financial statements. Marcus had gone pale. You're bluffing. I moved toward the door. The Goldman Sachs meeting starts in 2 hours. They're finalizing our $15 million credit line expansion. I'm sure they'll understand when you explain why the IRS just flagged the company for tax compliance issues. The panic started before I reached the elevator. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus frantically dialing his phone while Jennifer was already calling the legal department. Someone was shouting about getting the accountants on the line. 16 minutes. The elevator descended to the parking garage where my Tesla sat in the same premium spot I'd negotiated as part of my compensation package 3 years ago. The same spot Marcus had tried to reassign to his golf buddy last month, claiming senior executives needed better accessibility. I sat behind the wheel and waited. My phone started buzzing. 15 missed calls in 3 minutes. I built Meridian's financial infrastructure from nothing. When Marcus found me in 2012, I was a senior analyst at a mid-tier consulting firm, and he was running a failing tech startup from a WeWork space. He had the vision and charm. I had the financial acumen to make it profitable. We were partners then. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared 2 years ago when we landed the Microsoft partnership contract. I'd spent 6 months negotiating payment terms, structuring the deal to maximize our cash flow, and building financial projections that convinced their procurement team we could deliver. When TechCrunch ran the story, Marcus stood alone in the accompanying photo, quoted as the visionary leader who secured Meridian's biggest win. My wife Sarah saw it before I did. She'd watched me come home frustrated, venting about meetings where Marcus dismissed my budget concerns only to present watered-down versions of my proposals to the board the following week. He's using you, she told me 6 months ago over dinner. And when he's done, he'll discard you without a second thought. I defended him, said he was just focused on growth, that things would stabilize once we went public. The warning signs were everywhere. Marcus started excluding me from board presentations, claiming they were high-level strategy discussions that didn't require detailed financial input. He hired Emma Rodriguez as deputy CFO, supposedly to help with my workload. Emma spent most of her time in Marcus's office, learning systems I'd built, asking questions about processes I'd never fully documented. 2 weeks ago, I caught Emma copying files from my secured drives. When I confronted her, she claimed Marcus had authorized it for backup purposes. When I asked Marcus about it, he gave me some story about preparing for the IPO audit. Last week, Marcus started asking specific questions about my system access codes. Said the board was concerned about single points of failure, wanted to ensure continuity of operations. I should have known then. Should have seen that Emma wasn't there to help me, but to replace me. Should have realized that every financial model I'd created, every process I'd streamlined was being catalogued for my departure. But I trusted him. After 12 years of partnership, I still believed Marcus Chun was my friend. 14 minutes left. Marcus's call came exactly when I expected it. Alex, we need to talk. No, we don't. Listen, maybe I was hasty back there. The board's been pressuring me about operational costs, demanding efficiency improvements. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. The same lie he'd been telling himself for months. The filing deadline is in 13 minutes, Marcus. Okay, look. What do you want? We can work something out. Stock options, a consulting contract, whatever you need. 3 minutes ago, he'd humiliated me in front of the entire board like I was some junior accountant caught embezzling petty cash. Now he wanted to negotiate. I want you to understand something, I said. For 12 years, I've worked nights and weekends building financial systems that made you rich. I've covered your mistakes, cleaned up your messes, and watched you take credit for work I did with my own expertise. Alex, I'm not finished. You brought Emma in to learn my job so you could fire me. You've been planning this for months. The only thing you didn't plan for was this. 12 minutes. Through the concrete walls, I could hear car doors slamming, people running. Someone was probably racing to the accounting department, thinking they could manually submit the filing. They couldn't. I'd built the system with multiple authentication layers specifically to prevent unauthorized access. What do you want? Marcus asked again, desperation creeping into his voice. I want you to remember this moment, I said. I want you to remember that for 12 years, I was loyal to you. I believed in this company, believed in what we were building together, and you threw it away because you were afraid of looking dependent in front of the board. 11 minutes. The Goldman Sachs meeting starts in 118 minutes, I continued. Without clean financial compliance, you have nothing to offer them. Without the credit line, you can't fund the product development for the Q4 launch. Without the Q4 launch, the IPO timeline collapses. I could hear voices in the background, keyboards clicking frantically. How do I fix this? Marcus asked. You don't, I said and hung up. I started my car and drove toward the exit. In 10 minutes, every financial system at Meridian Tech would enter compliance lock mode. Every automated payment, every payroll process, every financial report would require manual override. And for the first time in 12 years, Marcus Chun would have to solve a financial crisis without me. The compliance lockdown lasted exactly 6 hours and 23 minutes. I knew because I was sitting in Luna's cafe on Park Avenue, drinking oat milk lattes and watching the stock ticker on my phone. Meridian's share price had dropped 12% on news of regulatory compliance delays. My phone rang constantly. Marcus called 23 times. Emma called 15. Jennifer Walsh called 4 times. I let them all go to voicemail. At 4:47 p.m., the trading halt was lifted. I knew they'd found a way to manually submit the filing, probably by having their law firm file an emergency extension and paying the expedited processing fees. It would take weeks to fully restore automated compliance monitoring. At 5:15 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Chun, this is Robert Morrison from Morrison, Pierce & Associates. I represent Meridian Tech Solutions. We need to discuss your actions today. A lawyer. Marcus was already building a case. I haven't done anything illegal, I said. Sabotage is a serious offense, Ms. Chun. Intentionally disrupting business operations, causing financial harm to shareholders. The SEC might be very interested in your activities. I almost smiled. They thought they could intimidate me with legal threats, the same way Marcus had been controlling me with job security fears for months. I implemented a compliance protocol designed to protect the company from regulatory violations, I said. The system worked exactly as intended. If Meridian no longer employs qualified personnel to manage their financial operations, that's not my concern. You deliberately created a situation where you were the only person who could authorize critical functions. I created a situation where the chief financial officer had to authorize financial filings. I was the chief financial officer until approximately 2:45 p.m. today. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. Ms. Chen, I think you're underestimating the seriousness of your situation. The Goldman Sachs credit line was lost due to your actions. $15 million in financing. Multiple client payments were delayed. The damages could reach tens of millions. The contract was lost because Marcus fired his CFO minutes before a critical compliance deadline. Poor leadership decisions weren't my responsibility. We have documentation showing you created unauthorized access restrictions, implemented filing protocols without board approval, and deliberately withheld information necessary for business operations. Now I understood. They weren't just threatening criminal charges. They were building a civil case, claiming I'd sabotaged the company. Marcus was going to sue me for damages, try to destroy me financially so I could never compete with him. Document this, I said. Any legal action taken against me will result in full disclosure of all Meridian financial irregularities to federal regulators. Every accounting shortcut, every compliance corner cut, every financial manipulation Marcus approved against my recommendations. Let's see how many investors want to work with a company whose former CFO testifies that their books are fundamentally compromised. The line went quiet. You're threatening to reveal proprietary information. I'm promising to tell the truth about the company's financial practices under oath if necessary. I hung up and ordered another latte. 30 minutes later, Marcus called again. Alex, we need to meet face to face. No lawyers, no board members, just us. Why? Because this is getting out of hand. Because we used to be partners. Because maybe there's a way to fix this that works for everyone. I thought about it. Marcus was scared now, realizing that legal threats wouldn't make his problems disappear. He needed something from me, and he was finally ready to negotiate from weakness. Luna's Cafe on Park Avenue, I said. 1 hour. But I already knew he wouldn't come alone. Marcus arrived 47 minutes later with Emma Rodriguez and Jennifer Walsh. I watched them through the cafe window, Marcus pacing nervously while Emma and Jennifer sat in a black Mercedes SUV. They slid into the booth across from me. Marcus looked exhausted, Emma wouldn't meet my eyes, and Jennifer had the expression of someone who'd realized she'd backed the wrong horse. Coffee? I asked. Marcus shook his head. Let's just get to business. What's it going to take to make this go away? Make what go away? Don't play games, Alex. You know what I'm talking about. The legal threats, the compliance vulnerabilities, all of it. Name your price. I leaned back in the booth. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. That was Marcus Chen in a nutshell. Everything reduced to profit margins and shareholder value. He'd never understood that some people worked for reasons beyond their stock options. Tell me something, I said. How long have you been planning to fire me? Marcus glanced at Emma, then back at me. It wasn't personal. How long? 8 months, maybe 10. The board wanted to reduce executive compensation costs. Emma's salary is 45% of what we were paying you. 10 months. While I was working overtime to structure the IPO financial models, Marcus was already planning my replacement. While I was training Emma, thinking I was helping a colleague, she was studying my job so she could take it. Did you ever intend to keep me on as a consultant? I asked. Originally, yes. But then you started questioning the revenue recognition changes, making comments about audit readiness. The board felt you might become a compliance risk. A compliance risk because I'd refused to manipulate earnings to meet quarterly targets. Because I'd questioned some of Marcus's accounting decisions in front of investors. Show her the offer, Marcus said to Emma. Emma pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. On the screen was a consulting agreement offering me $75,000 to provide financial transition assistance for 60 days. $75,000? I said. For 12 years of institutional knowledge? It's a generous offer considering the circumstances, Marcus replied. I read through the contract. Standard non-disclosure language, non-compete clauses, and a section requiring me to provide complete documentation and access credentials for all financial systems and processes developed during my employment. They wanted me to hand over everything, every password, every financial model, every compliance protocol I'd built to protect the company. In exchange, they'd pay me what Marcus probably spent on client dinners in a month. There's one problem with this, I said. What's that? You assume I want to work with you. Marcus's face tightened. Alex, be reasonable. You're unemployed. You're facing potential legal action. This is your chance to walk away with something. I smiled and closed the tablet. Marcus, do you know who called me this morning? He looked confused. What do you mean? At 8:15 a.m., before I even got to the office, I received a phone call from David Kim at Apex Capital Management. He wanted to discuss a position as their new chief financial officer for portfolio companies. Emma's eyes widened. Marcus went pale. The position pays twice what you were paying me, I continued, plus equity in a $200 million fund. You're lying, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed him the call log. 12 missed calls from Apex Capital between 8:15 a.m. and 3 p.m. All from David Kim. He called back during your little board meeting, I said. Left a voicemail asking if I was interested in discussing immediate opportunities. The truth was, David had been tracking my work for months, impressed with the financial structures I'd created for high-growth tech companies. That's impossible, Trevor whispered. Is it? Who's been handling the Apex due diligence for our Series C funding for the past 4 months? The truth hit him like a sledgehammer. Jennifer Walsh had been pushing hardest for operational efficiency, but she was also a limited partner in Apex Capital. She'd been feeding information to David for months, helping them understand exactly what Meridian's financial capabilities were and who was responsible for them. Jennifer set this up, Marcus said. She's been recruiting me since March, I confirmed. Discreet conversations at industry events, casual questions about my satisfaction with current management, subtle hints about better opportunities. I turned her down because I thought I owed you loyalty. Emma was staring at the table, probably realizing her new job might not be as secure as she'd thought. But today changed my mind, I continued. When you fired me in front of the board, you made it clear that 12 years of partnership meant nothing. So I called David Kim back. Marcus grabbed his phone. I need to call Jennifer. Too late for that. What do you mean? I checked my watch. At 6 p.m. today, Apex Capital is announcing the acquisition of key personnel for Meridian Tech Solutions. They're hiring me to restructure their entire portfolio of financial operations. That doesn't affect us, Marcus said, but his voice was uncertain. Doesn't it? Who do you think holds the patents on our financial modeling software? The silence stretched across the table like a chasm. Marcus's mouth opened without sound. Emma looked like she might faint. The patents, Marcus finally managed. Filed in my name over the past 3 years. Every major financial algorithm, every compliance protocol, every automated system. My lawyer assured me that as the actual inventor, I retained intellectual property rights regardless of employment agreements. It was true. My attorney had advised me years ago to file patents on my innovations, partly for protection and partly for recognition. The financial modeling system alone is worth $2 million in licensing fees, I continued. Compliance automation is worth another $3 million. Apex estimates the total portfolio value at $8 million. You can't do this, Marcus said. I already did. Signed the licensing agreement 2 hours ago. Apex gets exclusive rights to my patents for 7 years. In exchange, I get an executive position, equity in their fund, and 25% of all licensing revenue. What happens to Meridian? Emma asked quietly. That depends on Marcus, I said. Apex is willing to negotiate a licensing agreement that would let you continue using my systems for a fee. How much? 40% of gross revenue. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. The bankruptcy filing came 8 weeks later. I was sitting in my new corner office at Apex Capital, reviewing financial projections for a biotech acquisition, when my assistant brought me the news. Meridian Tech Solutions had filed for Chapter 11 protection, citing unsustainable operational costs and loss of key intellectual property rights. Marcus had tried to fight it. He'd hired 2 different law firms, challenged my patent claims, and even attempted to have me investigated for corporate espionage. Nothing worked. The patents were legitimate, the licensing agreement was ironclad, and my departure from Meridian had been entirely his choice. He'd also tried to operate without my systems. For 3 weeks, Emma and a team of contractors attempted to rebuild the financial infrastructure from scratch. The results were catastrophic. Client invoicing failed, payroll systems crashed, and the SEC launched a formal investigation into compliance violations. The lawsuits followed quickly. Goldman Sachs sued for breach of contract. Microsoft terminated their partnership agreement. Apex Capital, now armed with my proven systems, swept in to capture several of Meridian's abandoned clients. Jennifer Walsh resigned from the Meridian board one day before the bankruptcy filing. She'd already accepted a full-time position at Apex, helping to integrate acquired assets and transition former Meridian clients to new financial frameworks. Emma Rodriguez lasted 2 months before Marcus had to let her go. She wasn't qualified for the position she'd been hired to fill, and without my systems to maintain, there wasn't enough work to justify her salary. The final blow came when the bankruptcy court approved the asset sale. Apex purchased Meridian's client list and remaining intellectual property for less than Marcus owed in legal fees. The company that had taken 12 years to build was liquidated in a single morning. I didn't attend the auction. Instead, I spent that Tuesday working with my new team on a financial restructuring plan for a promising fintech startup. Real work, meaningful challenges, projects that would be credited to the people who actually designed them. Sarah met me for lunch at a restaurant near the Apex offices. She'd been supportive through the entire transition, never questioning my decisions. "Any regrets?" she asked over salads. I thought about it. Marcus Chun had destroyed our partnership, betrayed 12 years of trust, and tried to steal credit for my life's work. But his actions had also freed me from a situation that was slowly crushing my passion for financial innovation. "None," I said. She smiled. "Good, because David Kim called this morning. He wants to discuss expanding your responsibilities to include merger and acquisition strategy." At Apex, my ideas were valued, my contributions were recognized, and my name appeared on every patent application. The signing bonus had paid off our student loans. The equity would fund our children's education. The salary was enough to let Sarah pursue her master's degree, something she'd postponed for years. Marcus Chun, meanwhile, was working as a business development manager for a mid-tier consulting firm in Austin. I'd heard through industry contacts that he was making about 25% of his former salary, living in a rented condo, and telling anyone who would listen that his former business partner had stolen his company. Emma Rodriguez had found work as a staff accountant for a small firm that specialized in tax preparation. Jennifer Walsh was making more money as an Apex executive than she'd ever made as a board member. The truth was simple: actions have consequences, and eventually everyone pays for their choices. Sometimes justice just takes a little longer than you'd expect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead.